Okay. This is like speaking to the choir. All of you, or most all of you, and I have been friends for 30 more, maybe some of you 50 years. And those of you who are new are going to get the content of this theme. The theme for the week is Spirit is the Life, and I'm going to kick it off, and a couple of my colleagues are going to talk more on this week. So let me start by showing you one of the teachings that started this. And those of you who like the reading numbers, I've got them at the bottom. The lesson must ever be that spirit is the life. The mental is the builder, and the physical or material results from application. Application is a major teaching in the Edgar Cayce readings. When I came into this work over 50 years ago, I was studying all the metaphysical sources and spiritual sources, and he was the only one that emphasized whatever you learn, you must apply. You must use in your daily life. Because in doing, he said, comes the understanding. Yes, you have the knowing, but you don't have the understanding unless you've lived it. You've applied it. So these were key concepts that Edgar Cayce taught, and Edgar's actually quoting the letter of James here. In doing comes understanding, therefore he quotes James, "Be ye doers, not hearers only." So this was a key for him. So your physical result of your mental building and your spiritual guidance is in you applying it daily in your conversations, your thoughts about yourself, your activities, your choices you make. This is when you really gain the understanding. Now, the mental is the builder, and all of you know his famous quote, "Mind is the builder." Yes, got it. And here's the quote from Proverbs: "As you think with your heart, so you are." And he's saying, mind is the builder. You are building it with your thoughts. In fact, in the other discourses that he gave, he would say, thoughts are things, and they can become crimes or miracles. And now, I was in my early 20s when I first learned that thoughts were this powerful, because, most humans think thoughts are private things I play with myself, and it doesn't matter what I think of you privately, right? He could read your thoughts. When I read some of his discourses in which he was reading another person's thoughts, I was freaked. And when I learned that my thoughts are actually making an impression on a collective consciousness, and someone like Edgar could read my thoughts, I was a mess for a couple of years. And I would go to myself, I was at university, and I'd say, "Oh, not that thought, no. And then I read a reading that said, new thoughts overshadow old thoughts. New thinking patterns overshadow old thinking patterns. I was saved. I would go, "Not that thought, no, pull that baby back. Here's a new thought, And I became very present of mind on what I just was thinking. And I was watching out for my thoughts. Now, I don't want you to think it's just about others. I was watching what I thought about myself, because I was laying a trip on myself. That thought pattern affects me. If you think this, you're actually becoming that. No, this isn't my potential. This may be what I feel I am weak on, but I have potential. So I would change the thinking patterns about myself, as well as how I was thinking about others. This is a very powerful teaching. Now, when it comes to the spirit teaching, this really stretches us. Spirit is the natural, normal condition of an entity. Now I'm walking around up here in this big lump of flesh, bone, blood, and he's saying that's not your normal, natural condition. So I searched to understand spirit. It was a great, long, lifelong search. And when I saw this image, I thought, I think that can bring that into the 3 dimensions to explain a multidimensional teaching. I saw the energetics of us, and remember, I was raised in the 60s where we judged people by their vibrations. And at university, we didn't say, oh, she's beautiful, have you seen her? No, we'd say, have you felt her vibes? Wow, she's got good vibes. Oh my God, I can't deal with her vibes. Oh, geez. Or it'd be the other way around. The girls would say to us, I don't like your vibes. And then we got the great song, Good Vibrations, right? A great song. Vibrations. Well, this sort of helped me see spirit. Not matter, not physicality, not clever personality. No. The real vibes was the first entrance to the essence of spirit in a person. And then I felt that sphere in the middle was like the realm of my thought pattern, my mind, mostly my higher mind, and I'll explain that as we go along. So when I saw this, I thought, okay, so this is the teaching, and for my 3-dimensional self, this helps me represent it. And then I started thinking about myself first. Where is the essence, the natural, normal condition of me that is spirit? And I started to search for that, searching for spirit. And in Matthew 7, there is this absolute universal law promise. If you seek, you will find. I took that hook, line, and sinker. I'm going to seek and I'm going to know spirit. Well, Edgar rarely recommended books, but one of the books he recommended was by Ouspensky, Tertium Organum. And I read that book. It's very difficult. I don't recommend you run out and buy it right away. But here were some of the principles that I think Mr. Cayce liked about Ouspensky. First, the first step in acquiring consciousness, now I was trying to become conscious of spirit instead of physicality, is to realize that we are not fully conscious. Your first step is to say, I am not fully conscious. It is an illusion that we are fully conscious, okay, all right? And when one realizes one is half asleep, what happens? You're half awake. And I thought, hey, I've taken the first step. Hot dog, we're going to do this. The most difficult thing is to act yourself consciously. And I added mindfully because that's a modern term that we really use a lot. Though I told my mindful friends that in my day, we used the term presence of mind. Meant the same thing. Being mindful, we used to say, I had the presence of mind not to do that. Or I had the presence of mind to do that. You see? It's very similar to what they use mindfully. And he's talking to be consciously aware of yourself. So once again, now I was watching my thoughts. Now I'm trying to be conscious of the vibrational essence of me, because that's my natural, normal condition, spirit. So I was struggling to get all this going. The aim is to reach higher states of consciousness, higher states, and to be able to work with higher centers of activity. Well, Edgar was teaching the same stuff, so I was working real well, Cayce and Ouspensky, and so this helped. So I just underlined that again. The aim is to reach higher states of consciousness, or what we might call more fully conscious, not so much asleep, and to be able to work with higher centers. Edgar would say, higher vibrations, higher states of consciousness, higher realms of awareness. When you walked up to Mr. Cayce, he was so fully conscious, he knew what you had been thinking and doing. And so his secretary, Gladys, told me one time, you know, some Monday mornings I would go the back way to my office because it was none of his business. The teaching there in the readings comes from the understanding that if you want to be fully conscious and as psychic as Edgar was, you must love human beings, even their human weaknesses, because you're going to see all that. And if you don't already have a condition of love, you're going to slip into the dark side of human nature in judgment, condemnation, criticism. So you have to already know to human is air. To air is human. And that if you're fully aware, when you meet people and you're fully aware, you're going to see their weaknesses and their strengths. And Edgar's teachings always said, minimize the vices, maximize the virtues, minimize the weaknesses, accentuate the strengths. And I lived that in my childhood family, and then when I got married, Doris and I succeeded because we did that with both of us. Now, I'm not saying we were really successful. Some weeks we go, you're thinking badly about me, and we go, I'm trying not to. But it's so hard. We would laugh it off and start over. Okay, for the next 2 weeks, let's start over and try to just think of the best of each of us, and we'd go for a while until you fumbled. Physical is just appearance. So this was the hardest thing because I was a normal male human full of nature's hormones and all, and appearance would overwhelm me. But quickly in high school and university, I learned some of the most beautiful girls are the meanest women I've ever met. And some of the ugliest are the most lovable, cozy women I've ever met. And so I started to say, watch out for the good looks. They're false. They'll fool you every time. Well, then I came across the scriptures again. I always love bringing in the Bible. Judge not by appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Now, I went to the Cayce readings, and he had readings where he interpreted the meaning of righteousness. And he said it's right actions, right thoughts, right purposes. Well, I had been studying Buddhism too, so I quickly realized Cayce's picking pieces out of the Eightfold Path of Buddha. Cayce's actually quoting a phraseology that fits with the Eightfold Path, the Buddhist path. So he started to bring a lot of things together, a lot of Hinduism, Taoism from the ancient Chinese, ancient Egyptian wisdom. I mean, this was really coming together. Mayan, Toltec, Aztec wisdom. So that's when I really started to spread out. But I was still on a search for spirit. And this is how I first met it. I had pets, and the first time I really comprehended spirit, this little cat that I had, well, the whole family had, it was my family, got aged, and I was sitting in the living room, and she got up and she went all the way to the back bathroom and laid down near the air conditioner vent. I thought, well, I guess she wants to cool off, so I'm sitting there. I look again, and she's not moving. So I go over there, and there's her body. But I know that's not her. This isn't the thing that ran around the house and jumped all over things and tore up the carpet. This isn't the thing that ran out back chasing squirrels. This is just the lump she was in. And that was the first moment when I realized that Precious's spirit was that animated force of life in her eyes and the animation of this lump here, of these physical atoms and cells, that was precious. And she left because the body had aged to a point, and she left. And so that really helped me. That was the first time. Then after Precious died, the cat, my wife passed. Doris and I had been married some 40 years, and we had been together even before that. So she went into hospice, and now she and I were brought up in Cayce. She was a California girl, and she was with Don Ahart's study group in California. So she learned everything I was learning here in the study groups I was with here, you know. And we got together. Well, one of the things while she was in hospice, and we had her in a special bed situation and all, we knew, she and I knew, that Edgar Cayce had told his son, Hugh Lynn Cayce, he went by both names, Hugh Lynn, that when you go off to the war, World War II, a lot of men are going to die in your arms. As they're dying, tell them to look for the brightest light and follow it as long as they can, because as soon as they turn away, that's the dimension they're going to be on. Oh, that's interesting. The apple of your eye is on this dimension right now. You're not ready to go higher. You've got unfinished business, you see? Okay, so Doris and I knew this. So one time when I thought she was real close to passing, I said, now look for the brightest light you can see and follow it as long as you can. And she sweetly rolled over and said, I'm not leaving yet. I said, okay, you want some poached eggs and grits? She loved poached eggs and yellow corn grits. But eventually, that day came, and I heard that breath that everybody told me about. That is the death breath. And I knew she was gone. And all I had left was this vehicle she had been using. But all the essence of her that I had intimately come to know and she had given me of herself was gone. All I had was the vehicle. And yet, almost a year later, she comes to me in spirit. Now I get another lesson. Okay, I'm leading a tour for A.R.E. in Australia, and we were out on the sites, and it was a wonderful place to tour. But I thought I'd take a nap before dinner. So I reclined on the hotel bed, and immediately I was in this other place where she was. Now, I've got a little part of Cayce here I want to show you. What did Cayce teach was the safest and easiest way to communicate with spirits of loved ones? Anybody remember? Remember the whole series on spirit communication? All right, I'll just tell you. It was dreams during sleep, because it's easier for them to communicate with you because they don't have vocal cords and you're just stuck on eardrums alone, unless you've developed some of your psychic ability. Do you see? Then you can hear with the mind's ear and see with the mind's eye. Fortunately, I put quotes around dream because this was not a dream. What we call a dream, this was not. This was real. I left that body on that bed. I was with her in spirit, and I was in a dimension that I knew, a room, quote, quote, that I knew she had decorated because I knew her style. And there she was making tea, and she said to me, she turned to me, and she looked gorgeous, just like I had married her, not like she had died. Her body at death was terrible. And I looked at her, and she said, I've been wanting to talk to you. And I thought, uh-oh, here we go. And she said to me, you keep thinking about what you wished you had said or you wished you had done. She said, that doesn't come over here. What comes over here is all the good you and I did together and how we taught and raised the children. Then she said, so do you think you can stop, and she used this word, loop, L-U-L-O-O-P, loop thinking about regrets. I said, oh yeah, I can do that. I'm ready for that. Good, she said. That's what I want you to do. Now that really changed my life, you guys. But at that moment, she changed her expression. And I looked at her and I said, I psychically picked up her telepathy. Oh, I'm not supposed to be here yet. She said, not yet, bye-bye. I woke up on that hotel bed in the three-dimensional world in a lump of flesh and blood, and I thought, oh man, that was so cool over there. And I thought, well, not time yet. So that was the next time. So the thing I noticed was the true, pure expression of her is her spirit. Now, when she was encased in a physical form, she suffered the laws of physicality, including cancer and what it would do to a physical, atomic, cellular body. But when she was free of it, she was lively, herself, beautiful, energetic, but also what freaked me out the most, she knew what I had been thinking. Wait a minute, how could you know I was thinking regrets? I wished I had said, how'd you know that? Those are my thoughts, private. No, there's a collective consciousness that Edgar could tap into, and she was in that collective, and my thoughts were as vocal as my voice to her. And she knew, I got to talk with John. That guy's going to drive himself nuts, regretting that he didn't say this or do that. And so she caught me on a good moment and did it. So I learned more about spirit in that one. Then the third opportunity I had was my 102-year-old father passed away just this April 21st. And I actually saw the transition. Now, he didn't make the sound Doris's breath made. I was holding him in my arms. He weighed about 100 pounds. He's 102 now. He's real close to going. Many times we thought he had gone, and he came back. And he didn't like poached eggs and grits, so we didn't offer that. So I'm holding him in my arms. It's about 11:30 at night. I'm going to put him in bed here. And suddenly he arches his back and he looks up and he goes into an ecstasy of vision. And I look up and I feel this happening, so I start praying. And I just pray the Lord's Prayer over and over, or what some of you call the Our Father. And I'm praying with him as he's having this ecstasy. And I realize I got his little carcass here that's nothing, but his mind, his spirit is all excited. And so I lay him down on the bed, and he always liked the pillows on both sides of him so he wouldn't roll off the bed. And I roll off, everything like that. And then I look, he's gone. The body's just there, just the carcass. And I think, man, now I understand. It's the animated essence inside. Spirit is living a journey, and part of the journey is to come into matter. So let me show you some of those teachings, but these things really helped me. First, Jung and Freud I had been studying, and I learned the complexity of humans because we have layers to us. Any of you who have ever dated and then married know the layers. Right. You learn them a few years after the marriage starts. But here's Cayce's model of layers. And the word godling comes from him being the Ra-Ta high priest of Egypt, in which the Egyptians called us godlings of the great God. Rays of the great Ray. It wasn't pronounced Ra. Ancient Egyptians pronounced R-A, Ray. In fact, some archaeologists will intentionally write the name R-E, so we say Ray instead of Ra, but it doesn't matter. But I'm showing you, rays of the great Ray, godlings of the great God, children of God is what the Maya called us. And the Maya said, oh, the lords of the underworld, the deeper consciousness, the dark shadow self, have tricked the children of God into a game that they can never win. and they go on like this. So once you study all of this, you get to see most every ancient culture knew the layers. This is a Mayan statue. They carved it this way to show you the layers. Now, it'll trick you because that's actually the outer physical self. This is your spirit self with less detail and a massive consciousness. So it's actually read reverse. This is your soul self. So when you see a ghost, it scares you. And then you see a human and you're, oh, I understand this. But the big person, or what Edgar called the entity, is the bigger. So as you come to develop an understanding of layers, and then you touch on Cayce's Lemuria and Atlantis, where he talks about spirit and mind coming into matter and body. This artist, when I captured him, I was in my 40s, so it was about 30 years ago. I knew I was given a gift. This is a wood cutting from an Asian artist who shows your spirit, divine self, coming in through the fontanelle of your soft spot in your baby body into the encasement of physical form. And that's what you're buoyant, you're smiling, everything's light, floating. If you look at the top, you see the higher consciousness, the mind descends. So Cayce talked about an involution into matter out of spirit, and then the evolution up through matter back into spirit, and that's the journey we're on. And spirit is your natural, normal condition. So here's the fontanelle. Here's the spinal cord. When you're in your mom's womb, or just as you're being born, you come in with the higher parts of yourself, your higher mind and your spirit, in through the fontanelle. It seals over and you're encased in a body for a sojourn. Now, there's secrets about this in the Bible. If you learn to look for secrets, Ecclesiastes 12:6 says, the golden bowl, this is the golden bowl, your skull, is broken open, and the silver cord is loosened. This is your silver cord, the spinal column that it has you in the nervous system. Then dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. The secret teaching's right there. And this is why Edgar recommended meditation, why he recommended dream study, because the body was suspended and the earthy mind quiet. Either you learned how to do it through techniques of meditation, or you just let nature put you to sleep. You then actually free yourself, and your soul can have experiences beyond. So this really more and more developed. And then I found in healing, just like Nicole was talking about, the Yoga Sutra and medicine, the Caduceus actually symbolizes the staff of Mercury, which shows, now let me show you, but I put all of this in these books that I wrote for you. I'm not trying to promote the books, I'm just telling you, if you want all the details, they're sitting in a book in the bookstore. Here you go with the Yoga Sutra. Oops, hold on, Okay, so this ball is your brain or your cranium, and this is your spinal cord, the golden cord. That's your cerebrospinal system. But Patanjali, the author of Yoga Sutra, called it the Sushumna. So that's your central nervous path to your brain. And the two serpents, the double serpents here, are Ida and Pingala, or they are parts of your autonomic nervous system, what Edgar talked about all the time, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic reacts, parasympathetic repairs. So your sympathetic reacts to things and drops the hormones and the juices you need to do whatever you want to do. Then when you rest and you're not being stimulated, the parasympathetic rebuilds the system. And these are symbolized by these serpents. And the colors are very important to Patanjali. So the red one is the active, energetic, sympathetic, and the white heals and brings you back. And of course, The circles here are the chakras, or what Edgar correlated them to be, the endocrine glands of your body. This is a female on the right and a male on the left, and the brain's been turned sideways so you can see the two brain glands, and they correspond. So this, wearing this symbol shows I know the secret mystery of health and where it comes from. Here's the way Edgar laid out all of the glands. Don't worry if you've had a hysterectomy, the body can compensate. Don't worry about those type things. Don't worry if you're taking strong drugs to subdue your adrenals or your thyroid up there. If you get into a more metaphysical, you will affect the physical, and you'll be working through it, okay? Let's see, anything else in here? No, I think you got the gist of this. So here's the big reading. It's 281:38. This is Edgar teaching. The glandular forces, then, are ever akin to the sources from which, through which, the soul dwells in the body. So what I thought was nature's unfair imbuing me with hormones, especially male hormones, turned out to be a blessing because my soul is working through those. All I had to do, now, this that I'm sharing with you now, I got out of Taoism, The Secret of the Golden Flower, and my book talks about how to reverse nature's way of using the hormones and the life force, the breath, to spiritual, metaphysical way. Now, even Patanjali touches on that, but I really got it out of ancient Chinese wisdom. Here's Cayce again, quote, "It may be easily seen then how very closely the glands are associated with reproduction, degeneration, aging, and regeneration." And I thought, well, hot dog, that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I wrote in that book I showed you just a minute ago. Where was that book? There it is. I put health, healing, and rejuvenation in there, Cayce's teachings everywhere. So, reproduction, life-giving, life-building, degeneration, using life so much that you're burning the fires of life and everything, and then you hit, what, late 40s, and you go, man, this can't be all there is. But you're already burned up a lot of juice getting there with your ideas. So you start to regenerate. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to walk. Yeah, right. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do. And you're working on regenerate. And now watch Edgar here. And this throughout not only the physical body forces, not only the physical forces of the body, but the mental body and the soul body. So actually, when I started to make that turnaround at midlife crisis, I was affecting my mind as well as my body. Do you see? And my mind was thinking a lot about how to make the body healthier. So you see, the mind was processing a lot of issues, a lot of things. But it turns out that when I'm in deep meditation and I use these principles to actually awaken the master gland of the body, the pituitary, it sends different messages to the endocrine glands, and they secrete different hormones. I'm actually changing the body during a meditation period. Do you see? Now, I've shared this with many of you, but it's going to freak out some of you new ones. Here's how I would massage the pituitary gland, which, if you look at her here, it's hanging off of the hypothalamus. See the pituitary? So it's suspended underneath the frontal lobe of my brain. Well, what's the ancient teaching? Chanting, sounding, making sound, om, something like that. So, but you got to do it in a resonant, vibrational manner. So let me show you the Eastern development of this, though the West had a lot of this if you look through history carefully. And I could do rolling ones, you know. Now the O is drawing up everything, and the is vibrating the pituitary. And that gland and all its cells go, what is he doing? Change the messages to the other endocrine glands, drop different hormones, and I'm in it. Now this is physical effect on a physical body. And Edgar's saying that those glands are where my soul is connected. So keep that in mind. You've got lots of tools from the wonderful wisdom he brought to us. Now, if you go to Kabbalah, and I'm telling you, it's a little tough, but I wrote it in a way I think you can deal with it. I had a lot of rabbis tell me, you shouldn't share this with anybody under 40. And some of them actually said, and no women. Ooh. Ooh. And I would say to them, there were only a few, trust me, ladies, there were only a few. I said, do you know the only way into this world is through a woman? Anyway, this is the tree of life in the Kabbalah, and in it are all the dimensions, the planes of activity, all the energy centers and dynamics of the great creator in physicality manifested. And so the complexity is seen in their teachings, which is wonderful. Now, notice, we're down here really into the body, but we're up here into the mind in the moral triad. Now, you know, science found out that of all the apes, no great ape has a frontal lobe as big as ours. And they found out the frontal lobe is moral decision-making. Decision-making with a moral angle. Therefore, here is ancient Kabbalah saying the moral triad is the mind. But look, they even have areas above the body and the mind in the celestial triad of your celestial being, your celestial nature. Now, once you start living celestially, mentally, morally, heartfelt, caring, and action, the lower chakra of the energy of action, you are becoming holistic. And Ouspensky said that's what you're seeking. The higher centers and the higher consciousness. So Kabbalah really plays a great part in this. And I blended a lot of Cayce with the ancient secret teachings of the Kabbalah, or Kabbalah. Now, being a reincarnated ancient Egyptian, as is Nicole Charles, I can tell you a little secret about that, yes. She too. And if any of you know Allison Ray here and ever seen her office with all the Egyptian, I didn't even have to ask. I could look at her office and say, ooh, here's another returning Egyptian. Well, Edgar was Rata, the high priest of Egypt. This is little Senedjem's tomb. He is an artisan. He worked all day on Pharaoh's tomb, came home, got some dinner, went into his little garage and painted his own tomb. See? But he painted some of the most important spiritual teachings on this wall. This is very small tomb, no bigger than this part of the stage up here. But here's the biggest teaching. Between our eyes is the deeper mental frontal lobe and its connection with the endocrine glands of the pineal and the pituitary. And it connects with the crown chakra, which opens and lets the white light flow through. Now, the blue circle tied to the blue stem is infinity and temporality united. Remember, Carl Jung said it's not cutting off some part of yourself. It's not cutting off your fleshy self. No, no. It's integrating it properly into the whole of who you truly are. Well, here's the ancient Egyptians saying the exact same thing. Your infinite self and your finite self work together. Your individual self and your universal self work together. And the white light flows, and now see the black wavy lines? That's the water of life is starting to flow. And it fills this cup, and here you have in ancient Egypt, the 23rd Psalm, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord, the state of consciousness. And what did Jesus say? In my Father's house are many mansions. Anyway, it flows over and it waters the lotuses. When the lotuses bloom, they put out their fragrance of the way back to heaven. And any Egyptian who looked at this and saw these jackals know there are no blue jackals. They're all black. This means these are symbolic of spirituality, because blue is spiritual, green is ghost, red is flesh. I won't go into all that, but they know this is spiritual. So if you want to awaken your intuitive sixth sense, S-I-X-T-H, sixth sense, and pick up the trail that you have lost your way home, you do this, and your sixth sense, symbolized by spiritual jackals, will pick up the trail back to heaven. That's what they're teaching you right here in this artisan, just an artisan, not a big priest or pharaoh, Synedjim. Great teaching. I put a whole bunch of that in this Egyptian book if you're into it. Of course, Cayce said, your soul never dies, never ever. The first 10 minutes after death may be a little startling when you find you're still alive, but nobody can hear you because you're not using the vocal cords to vibrate their eardrums. You're not reflecting light off the surface of your body. So unless they have the mind's eye and the mind's ears awakened, open, you won't be able to communicate with them. And you'll be a little startled because you are alive. I could tell when Dad was in that ecstatic state that he was wanting to just fly out. But I guess I had to let him down or something, because once I put him down and settled the body, it's like thinking, okay, the temple I used is safe, I'm gone. And then the hospice nurse came in the next morning and pronounced him, and you know how it goes, okay. So there's no death. Now, I want to show you something. This is a screenshot of the membership enlightenment courses. And July, it's cut off here, but this, hold on, I think I have this. Yes, I do. Good boy, John. Member enlightenment course for July is the entity. And then I take all of Cayce's teachings in showing you how big we really are, what he meant by calling you the entity. You are so much bigger. There are so many parts to you, so many levels of influence and complexity. If you're a member, you can access this by going to our online and going into the member section, and you'll be able to watch the video of me teaching this part, but you'll also get the written lesson that I'm showing here. You'll get all free because you're a member. If you're not a member, go to edgarcayce.org, O-R-G/join. If you are a member and you want to renew, just do /renew. It's real easy. We got it all. If you misspell Cayce and spell it the British way, this is the French spelling of Cayce. The British way is C-A-S-E-Y. You remember Cayce at the back? Okay, we still own that too. So you'll end up in the same place. Don't worry. You can't lose us. Now, there's a lot of modern evidence, and do you know in the 1930s, Cayce said in the late 60s and 70s, you're going to have a new perspective on death. What happened? The medical profession became so sophisticated you could die on them and they could bring you back to life. The trouble was the story you were telling when you came back to life. You actually were, a part of you was conscious while you were dead. Your body was dead on the table. And all of these, I traveled with Raymond Moody giving lectures, and I heard him lecturing on he had one of the first books, 1971. Anybody read it? Oh, never mind. Okay. And then Eben Alexander got involved, and some lady, I don't know who that is, but over 30 books on Amazon on near-death experiences. I gave these to Mom and Dad, which was probably a mistake because they left pretty shortly after I gave them the book. One other quick thing, we're doing good on time. One other quick thing is Edgar said, physical life here is about soul growth. Learning in relationships with others to love one another, and learning for yourself to reconnect with your creative source of life, the Creator. So it was all this, and Edgar used the oyster as the symbol. You are going to have irritations in life. Doris and I had plenty. But the teaching is, like the oyster, make a pearl out of those irritants. That's soul growth. Now, when I caught myself identifying truly a bad quality of me, I did not let myself sink into the pit of guilt or self-condemnation. I said, look, this is true. Others have pointed this out there, especially your family. They'll point it out real fast, But as you really honestly look at yourself, you become aware, doggone, this is a terrible pattern of mine. If you take this approach, I'm going to turn that weakness into a pearl. You are on soul growth. And that's what Edgar Cayce said. When he would give you a past life reading, he would start out, let me show you how he did it. He would lie down, put his hands over his forehead or third eye area, and he would see a white light. Once he saw the white light, he'd move his hands over his solar plexus, and he'd start slipping into deep breathing and REM, rapid eye movement. He was falling asleep on you. But his wife would say, you will have before you the inquiring mind of John Van Auken and his need to understand soul growth. And the white light would move, and Edgar would move with it. You see, and that's when he would come to the Hall of Records, and he would get the book of life of mine, and he could read it. I couldn't read it, and he's reading it, which really bugged me a lot to know this. He was flipping through pages of something that's personal. Anyway, or he could actually come to my higher, better self that I wasn't in touch with, and that would bother me too. In fact, he said, you are known as the entity in the higher dimensions already, even though you don't know your higher self yet. Well, that bugged me, because I didn't think it was fair for people in the higher to know all about me more than I knew about myself. And that felt a little naked. Remember Adam and Eve in the garden? God says, where are you? So we're hiding behind the bush. Why are you hiding? We're naked. You weren't naked. You were naked yesterday and everything was fine. Why are you hiding today? Because we've done some things we want to keep to ourselves. And we're going to do them again. All right, I'm going to make you close, and I'm going to give you the illusion that you can be outside my all-knowing consciousness. And that's what I've been living in. The illusion that it's all private to me, until I bumped into Edgar Cayce and other sources who knew all about me. And then I realized, oh man, I got to get this act together. I got to change this. Now, Edgar actually talked about changing all your karma into grace using the fruits of the Spirit. And here's the reading, I got the number there. As one sets itself to accomplish that which is of a creative influence, not destructive. I didn't turn to people and put them down. I didn't put myself down. I tried to lift myself up. I tried to lift, do you see, creative. You are no longer is the entity under the law of cause and effect or karma. when Edgar was asked what the earth is all about, he says it's the causal dimension. Whatever you sow, you are going to reap. Or as Nicole's grandmother said, you're going to eat. But rather you are in grace. Why? Because you're trying to be creative, life-giving, uplifting, understanding, patient, all the things of the fruits of the Spirit. So this book has all of that in here. Edgar says, don't put the material first, for you have to live with yourself a long, long while. Become acquainted with yourself. Know yourself and the relationship to the creative forces. If you are an immortal soul, that's a long time. And if you focus too much on the material, you're going to be uncomfortable when you get on the other side. Edgar said that, he told the little story that the soul comes into the earth with a picnic basket, and it leaves the earth and opens the little blanket over the picnic basket, and sometimes there's hardly anything to nourish the soul in there, and other times it's overflowing with nourishment. You don't want to go through this sojourn and have an empty basket when you get on the other side. And don't worry about your age. Remember what Peter wrote, love covers a multitude of sins. And really all the great teachings say love is the great growth vibration, the great growth spirit. You start to love. In fact, our study group, when I was young, I was in my 20s sometime, we took the discipline of being loving for the whole week, and we'd meet the next week. Well, 4 days went by of us doing that in our private lives, and my mom called me. She said, honey, some of your friends tell me you've been acting really weird lately. I said, oh, Mom, that's because I'm being loving all the time. It's our study group thing. Oh, honey, I think that's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. But they're calling me, so maybe you want to go back and tell them this. I said, okay. Now, again, if you go to the Revelation, which Edgar Cayce did a marvelous job, you are going to see the symbol in chapter 12 of your divinity. It is symbolized by a glowing woman standing on the moon, wrapped in the sun, with 12 stars over her head, and she's pregnant to deliver your new spiritual self. This is both true in the macrocosm of all of us and in the microcosm of the disciple John, who's having the vision of the revelation. Remember what he said? I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I saw and was told to write. Remember? So he's in the Spirit. Get it? And this is about Spirit is the life? Okay. We'll tie it up there a little bit. You have this, but here's the problem. Michael the archangel's there, and John sees this great red dragon ready to swallow the sacred baby as soon as he delivers it from his heart and mind. And Michael says, see the dragon? That was the serpent in the garden that you listened to. Now it's grown big and strong, and it'll swallow it up. And then John starts to cry and weep and call for help. That's all he had to say. All you had to do was stop keeping your will suffocating any help. Once John called for help, Michael and his angels ride out and drive the dragon out of the way. She delivers the baby, and Michael says, now the accuser is driven out of heaven. Who's the accuser? John's self-doubt. John's statement of I'm not worthy. He blocks everything with the whisper of the guilt of original sin from the Garden of Eden. All of us have that. And that sin, according to Cayce's teachings, is seeking selfish focus over cooperative, collective living with others and the Creator, but seeking self. It's eating the fruit of the knowledge from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Edgar said, All evil stems from self and selfishness. You'll find this in the readings. Just look up selfishness. He must have 1,000 descriptions of it. Once John stopped accusing himself of being unworthy and said, I need help, God had already put the angels in charge for us. Each of you has this guarantee in Psalms. God put those angels there to help you, and as soon as you say, I'm not locking this up, I want your help, I'm opening myself up. Here I am, full of mistakes and bad habit patterns. I'm naked before you, help me. Bam! All the forces flow to you because you have subdued your will to God's will, and you're seeking. And the accuser is driven out of heaven, and the red dragon is driven away, and you start to birth your child. It's in the womb of your heart and your mind. You conceive it, but you eventually have to deliver it. And while it's gestating, it shapes, because each of us is unique. That's why Edgar said, the entity, because you have a uniqueness to you. And so keep all of this in mind. You can really grab on to forces that want to help you. And Kabbalah is full of angelic forces and mystical spells and ways to create enchantments that shield you. I started using lots of Edgar Cayce's. How many of you know Cayce developed a prayer of protection? Good, good. And you can spin off of it uniquenesses depending on where you are in your life and what you need protection from. Most of the time, it's yourself. So here is the book of Cayce's readings done by a study group in New York with Edgar alive and dealing with their questions. And he said the first 10 chapters of the Revelation are how to spiritualize your body. So the 7 churches of Asia Minor are the 7 spiritual centers. He gives you all the symbols, and each thing that an angel does to one of the churches, or when they open the seal, the 7 seals of the book of life, tells you an aspect of your bodily pattern you need to spiritualize. The next 10 chapters spiritualize your mind. And you go through these thoughts like I was telling you earlier and all. And then the last 2 chapters are the promise of the fulfillment. If you've ever read the last chapters of the Revelation, it says, the curse that was put on in Genesis is taken away. All suffering, all pain, all death is over. Now you're fully your soul, your immortal soul self. And then the Revelation says, Satan will be banished from the earth for 1,000 years. And Edgar Cayce says, put it in your heart to be here then. You've been here during the bad times. Don't miss the good times. Be determined to be in this dimension for that 1,000 years. Imagine how many incarnations you can have in 1,000 years if you desire them. Remember, Cayce gave readings for, I think it was somewhere between 15 and 17 people who were never going to reincarnate again. They were finished with this dimension. But he told others, like for example, the 2 brothers, Mort and Edwin Blumenthal, who built the big building on the hill with their wealthy money from the New York Stock Exchange. Okay. One of them was didn't need to reincarnate again, Mort. So Edwin sends, they didn't have phones, well, they had phones, but they sent a telegram. I can't even remember what the damn thing was called. A telegram. And it was Edwin. Edgar, you told Mort that he wouldn't have to come back anymore. How about me? Huh? So Edgar goes, gets into the trance. Oh no, Edwin, you're part of the group that's going to lead all the souls out of here. You've got to come back many more times. I can just see Edwin going, gee, when did I make that promise? All right, so you get the idea. Here are the last 3 readings for you. As the entity moves from sphere to sphere, it seeks its way to the home, to the face of the Creator, the Father, the Mother. In other readings, he uses Father, Mother. The first cause for you coming into existence. Cayce identifies the first cause, quote, that the created would be the companion for the infinite eternal Creator, end quote. This is the reason we were created. As a result, the created, our soul, quote, given opportunities to, quote, show itself to be not only worthy of, but companionable to the Creator. And we're talking about the Creator of the entire universe. So you need to be up and doing. You need to get going. You need to study, learn, grow. You need to find yourself in those situations that help you make a pearl out of some of the irritants you always deal with yourself and others. I love this motion because when I see it, I feel like I've known that movement. Do you feel like you might have flown like this? I had only been married to my wife a few months when she was flying like this around the room. Oh yeah, she would have these nights. We would be dead asleep and she'd turn over, don't move. That's Taurus, I'm asleep. They're moving through the room now. I'll go with them. Oh, jeez. One time, I'll tell you, this is how spiritual she was. One time I was making a little bit of money and we were living on over a garage. And so she was sleeping on the bed to the wall, and I was sleeping here. And this was the floor. And I'm sleeping when suddenly she comes over me and she's talking to someone there. And I realize as I listen to her part of the conversation, I cannot hear that, she's talking to Jesus. And I'm going, whoa. Man, and so I start to pray a little bit, and then I say, Doris, should I get into this conversation? I learned fast with Doris, no. Shh, shh, okay. So, it's all there for us. We just need to live it, manifest it, apply it in our daily thoughts and actions. And I pulled it off. It's 3 minutes, just went to 6 minutes before 9. So any questions? You pretty much got it all. Great. All right. Thank you very much. Well, honestly, you guys, look at the content I was dealing with. I mean to tell you, it's great content. Yes, sir.
Yeah, John, how much was Edgar Cayce familiar with Ouspensky? Was he a big follower, or?
The man Edgar was not. The deep trance state Edgar was well familiar and actually said, he gave Ouspensky's Tertium Organum, and he gave Hudson, who wrote the book Laws of Psychic Phenomena, and of course he recommended the Bible many, many times. But those were two books I know he recommended, and I read those, yeah?
Did he ever mention Goethe?
No, he didn't. And I never found it in the readings. And now remember, I still search the readings and find new stuff. And I've been doing this. I first read Edgar when I was 16. And then I joined the A.R.E. I was 24. I got hired by Hugh Lin because of a dream. Hugh Lin used to meet with young kids and talk meditation. So I was supposed to meet with him about meditation, but when I came into his office, he looked at me and said, "Something happened to you last night." I said, Mr. Cayce, I had a dream. He said, "Tell me the dream." I told him the dream. He said, "You go over to Human Resources and tell them I said to hire you." So you want to hear the dream? Yeah. It's real quick. He took me to an orchard late at night in dark, and I went with him to this orchard. It was vast trees. all the trees had the most beautiful fruit I had ever seen, and it was nothing I had ever seen. And it was amazing. And he said, yes, our job here is to keep the fruit, but the trees were all gnarled and ugly like witches' trees on Disney. You know what I'm talking about? But change the trees. And I looked, and I looked. I thought, that's impossible. He said, that's our job here. And when he heard that dream, he said, you go over and tell Michael Grimm was the HR manager at the time. So I walk into Michael's office and I say, excuse me, Yulin told me to tell you to hire me. He said, what? Sit down. And he runs out of the office. And so he comes back and he said, here, you're working in the press for $2.20 an hour. My dad was furious, but I said, Dad, I've never been more happy. He said, you're happy? I said, I'm happy. He said, okay, I won't bother you. $2.20. Yes, sir.
How old were you?
I was probably, I started at 24, so I was probably 23. Somewhere in there, I could have been 24. It's all a little fuzzy here at 76, you know. And Doris used to correct me, but she's gone, you know. She would say, no, that's not the way it happened. He remembers it the way he wants to remember it. Okay, anything else? All right, let's call it a night, and we'll see you all in the morning. Bye-bye.